Hi guys, it's Allie Wildy. I am here at the Schwarzkopf Professional Headquarters in Culver City, California. I am here today to talk to you about becoming the authority in blonde. So I feel like there's a million different options. There's a million different ways to do blonde. So this is really about how we can set ourselves apart as artists and make our blondes the best that they can be. So I do a ton of blondes in the salon. I do a lot of color corrections. And I do a lot of like really soft pastels. But the biggest thing that I am always looking for in the salon is work smarter, not harder. So there's a lot that can go into a blonde look. There's a lot of different ways that we can go with it. So I feel like the more our products are doing work for us, the more that we can focus on the artistry of it all and really kind of fine tuning what it is that we're looking for. So when I'm in the salon, I'm using Blonde Me all the time. I think that the lighteners are super predictable. They have a lot of strength. They are going to do exactly what I want them to do. And then I have this whole other world of toners and high lifts and care products and a really like kind of a whole family that's going to take care of my blonde. Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter how light you get someone if their hair isn't in good condition. So we really want to make sure that the look, the finish, and the condition of the hair are all working together to give us a full blonde look. So we're going to talk about that today. If you were able to make it to our last Blonde Me Live, our 101, you saw me work with the beautiful Emily. So she is here today. We're going to take a look at her finish. Welcome back, Emily.
I'm so excited to be back.
I'm going to have you a seat. All right, so when we had Emily in last week, we did a super simple balayage painting. So I just want to kind of go over the basics of what that was. My thought process when I'm doing any sort of painting is I want the light source of the look to be our beautiful model. Model, client, guest, she's a model. Uh, so I always want it to feel like the lightness, the warmth, the excitement, the iridescence is coming from her. And then we're creating a head of hair that really supports that. So how do I do that? What does that mean in terms of actually doing the look? We did her whole head basically in 3 big sections. We've got each side and then the back as one section. When I'm working up the side, I separate out, I use a diagonal line. That's going to create a triangle shape here. When I'm looking at my triangle shape, I'm counting my sides. So a triangle, we're going to have 3 sides, right? So we've got side 1, side 2, and side 3. If any one of the sides of my triangle is her hairline, that becomes the top of my section. So when I count 1, 2, 3, here's her hairline. So that makes this the top of my section. And I'm going to hold my attention back away from the head and paint on here. I'm going to get a little lightener around the sides to make sure that everything blends, but I'm focusing really on this being the top of my section. So then I'll let that go. We'll get a little bevel as it lays, but that's perfectly fine. And we're just going to kind of keep moving. I use the Blonde Me Clay Lightener on Emily. So that's going to give us up to 7 levels of lift, but it's also going to encapsulate the hair section that we're painting. So I can feel free to drop her section, let it lay. It's going to make a little bit of a shell on the outside of the section, and then inside the lightener is going to keep on working. So I actually painted her with the Blonde Me Clay and just 20 volume. So I wanted something really subtle. She was looking at a lot of bronzy, pinky, like really warm, rich colors. So we wanted to make sure that we ended up with that finish, which means I don't have to go all the way to a level 10. I think a lot of times people are going blonde. They think you have to become like a full piece of paper to get a color. But in reality, if you're exposing some warmth inside of the hair strand, you can use that to support what you're doing. So as we work up the hair, the side of her head, my next section is going to be a straight line across. That's how I'm going to create my triangle because of the diagonal that was underneath it. So my first triangle was here. My second one is side 1, side 2, and side 3. And then I'm going to give this a nice soft paint just where it lays and then drop it right down. Again, we're using the clay lightener, so we're going to have a nice soft cast on the outside. And then that's going to give us the option to alternate as we move up her head. And then every time we are using a section that is going right against her hairline, that's the front of our section. We're going to pull our tension back this way and paint it right here. So then now, as she's all done, if Emily were to pull her hair back this way, we see all those pops of color. We see all of that lightness sitting on top. And then it's going to feel like a very soft, natural finish because we're seeing where the lightness is. If she lets it hang down and it kind of comes forward, even though we're seeing more depth on top, that lightness is underneath, which is going to create a glow effect. So the light source is her face, and that's where our softness is coming from. And then, we can kind of play it up, play it down. When you're doing a painting technique like this, if you do smaller sections, you're going to have more lightness. If you do bigger sections, you're going to have less. So you can really do this same kind of alternating diagonal line technique all the way across someone's head and completely change it every time based on what you want your finish to be. The only other thing that I want to call out with this placement is this very top section here. I saved this for last and took from both sides. So basically, you want to make sure that there's balance on both sides. If someone has a part that's off to the side or kind of at an angle, it might not be exactly symmetrical, but we're looking for balance, not necessarily exactly the same. And we're going to pull this back, paint the whole thing with the top being the top of the section. And then I just put one piece of foil underneath here to protect her part line and make sure that nothing could transfer. I'm usually not worried with anything transferring with the clay lightener, but if we're gonna lay it right on top of the part, I would like a little extra insurance because we've got gravity working against us at that point. And that's gonna make sure that we have balance right in the front. So this is where you can really create a dramatic money piece. You can do something softer, but either way, you're going to have a nice little pop right front and center, and then everything else will kind of blend from there. So we painted her up. We got her to about a level 8, kept it really nice and controlled and neutral, and then we mixed up her toner. So we used 2 parts of Blonde Me Strawberry and 2 parts of Blonde Me Milk Chocolate. So we wanted to give her some pink, but we also wanted it to be really grounded and make sure that it didn't feel, too crayon-y. Make sure it felt like something that would be in like a bronzy, pinky hair world. And then we also did 1 part of the new Peach Sorbet toner. So it is one of the deep toners. It's got a ton of pigment in it. It's a really beautiful, controlled peach. And so that is giving us this kind of like lucky penny pink is what Emily called it. So we're getting a good amount of warmth. It still feels very grounded. It doesn't feel artificial at all, but we know that something exciting is afoot. And now she's going to be unstoppable. She's going to be every shade of pink in the world. So once you give them a little, they ask for a lot, right? But so I'm really happy with where we ended up. I think that we got a really nice transitional period, and then from here we can kind of go anywhere. But this is just like some simple ways to take a very simple painting. It took us about 20 minutes to paint her, and then really take it to the next level and make sure that it feels very elevated, even though it was a really soft and simple technique. So Emily, if you're happy, then you're done. Awesome. All right. So she's ready to roll. But we can't just talk about hair color. We've got to do some hair color. So I have another model here, and it's Diane. Come on in. All right. So Diane has high hopes. I'm going to keep myself from doing too many Taylor Swift quotes because that's how we've been communicating so far today. And so basically, I wanted to do on Diane, she wants a pop in the front, but she wants it to feel low maintenance. She said the words to me, if I don't get my roots done for a while, I want it to be okay. So I feel like we've all heard that, but at the same time, she wants to be platinum. So, you're not in trouble for what you don't know, but we're going to work with what we have. So I did a technique on Diane that I actually came up with when I was home because my salon was closed for COVID. And I was thinking about how when we get back to the salon, everyone is ready to get their hair done at the same time. Suddenly, everyone's on the same schedule. I can't double book at that point because of the restrictions, and I'm going to be exhausted. So I've always been a work smarter, not harder kind of person, but it really kicked it into high gear for me when I was terrified about how tired I was going to be as all of my blondes came pouring in. So the idea is we're going to work in triangles and diagonals. My thought process is anytime you want something to feel really soft and seamless, throw it on a triangle, throw it on a diagonal, because then you automatically have a lot of soft diffusion as you go. So the sectioning for this is going to be based off of your part line that you're working with. All right, so I want to take a triangle section off of the top. So again, we're looking for balance, which does not necessarily mean symmetry. I think if we get too hung up in symmetry, we can actually make things feel off balance because people are people. She's got facial features, she's got a head shape. It doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be exactly the same. So I will come to a triangle. I want it to come to where I still have some part behind it. Does that make sense? Can I have look down for just a second? So I made this triangle here. I still have some part line here because we're still highlighting this, but this is like my focus piece. All right, you can look up. The way that we're going to go through this, you can adjust based on how much of a money piece you want to do. So sometimes I'll keep this really shallow as a section, and I will pack in some weave slices in there so that I have a small surface area that I'm covering, but I'm packing in a lot of blonde. Sometimes I will do it a little bit deeper because I'm going to start to diffuse it as we go back. So just keep that in mind as we go through, that you've got some options with what you want to do. The next thing I'm going to do once I have my triangle is I'm going to pull it back and look at the hairline. The hairline is going to tell you where to start. Everyone has like one side of their hairline is a little bit more angled than the other. One's a little bit flatter. It makes a really good start point. So even though Diane parts in the middle, here's our starting point over here, because when I pull her hair straight back, that gives me a perfect starting point. So I like to start with a weave right in the front because I can pack a slice right behind it. But if you slice right across the hairline, you're going to notice when that starts to grow out. So I'm going to do a weave right in front with a slice right behind it. So I still get a nice blonde pop at the hairline, but I'm not super worried about, the 2, 3 week grow out when you see just a tiny bit, because it's already diffused at the hairline by having a weave. Does that make sense? So I'm going to start there. I'm going to weave, slice, and I'm going to do that until I feel like I've created my money piece. And then I am going to transition into weaves. And then also I'm going to start to root them a little bit and pull them back a little bit, because for this particular look, I want it to be a little bit rooted as we get towards the back of the head. So I'm doing really tiny sections, I'm weaving them through, and then I'm starting to skip her natural root and have it softly kind of blend in. And so that is how we're going to start to get this pop in the front. And then you don't notice the drop off, but it kind of really softly, smoothly softens. But then she still has blonde all the way through back here in a way that makes sense. And so the top section I usually do first because I want to jump right in and get that going. I think if you're in a position where you're going to have a place be brighter than the rest of the head, I want it to be right up front. So I go ahead and start there and then kind of get it out of the way. I did do some of her color before we started today, because we only have so much time on our hands. But as you can see, we've got nothing going on over here. So I'm going to show you how I went through to do the sides of her head, because it's also in a way that will give us a lot of softness and diffusion as well. So how are we doing so far? If you guys have any questions that I am not answering as I'm moving right along, still put them in the chat. We've got people in the chat as well that will be able to help you out. Hopefully I will keep it moving and cover all of your questions, but if I don't, keep your eyes on the chat where we're typing back and forth, because I want to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. I'm all about, like, we're all here together, so let's make sure that we are getting everything out of it that we need to. So once I have my top triangle section, and then I'm separating the back of the hair away, I'm left with a section that's kind of this shape. So I'm separating the back, so I've got this line here. Up here, this is taking us to her part line. So this is what's left of her part. This is the back of my triangle section, and then her hairline. So it's not the most easy to name shape, but it's triangle adjacent. So it's in the world. And so that is the shape that we're working with. The first section that I am going to foil is her hairline. So I'm going to do, the angle that I'm doing is based on what her hairline looks like. So I am just going to take a little piece here right at her hairline. It's at this much of an angle because that's what her hairline looks like. So that's where my first foil is going to go. And I am just going to do ever the slightest. So I'm just doing a really soft, really fine section so that I can get in there, place my foil. And then at the hairline, I usually like to go right up to the root. Obviously, everything is kind of subject to change based on what look you're doing. So, feel free to be an artist and keep that in mind as you move along. But in general, I like to see a nice little pop right at the hairline. I feel like whether or not you're doing a money piece, it's really nice to see like some continuation of that. So even though I'm maybe more concentrated and have more of a pop here, if I get some nice tiny pieces right along her hairline, everything makes sense. Because I think that if you do like a really nice money piece right in the front and then leave out the rest of the hairline, it's an easy way to make it look a little clunkier, whereas this will feel much softer. So then I'm going to make sure that I get two kind of back to back almost, just to get some really soft blonde diffusion in there. And so again, the angle of my foil is determined by her hairline. And then we'll move this up. Okay, so once I get these first two foils in and we're keeping the angle at her hairline, I want to start to move up the head. The whole point of this sectioning is we're focusing on what matters, which is right around her hairline, laying on top of her part line, all of that. And we're not really concerned with the hair that doesn't matter as much. So I'm going to start to pivot as we go up the side of her head, meaning I'm now starting to straighten out my sectioning a little bit. I'm not going at the angle of her hairline, and I'm left with a bit of a triangle where I've got where I was before, the new angle that I have, and the back of my section is wider than the front. This is because I am going to still just kind of weave across the top. More of what was in the back section is going to drop, and less of what's in the front section will drop as I start to kind of move up the side of her head. And I will happily explain to you why that is. I want to start to move this angle up because we don't need as much blonde packed in here. First of all, because we can't see it as well. And second of all, because the whole point is transitioning back to her natural. We want to leave out more hair towards the back of her head than we do in the front. And so instead of super foiling and then, maybe spreading out our foils a little bit more and then moving to something else, with one foil, I've got a concentration at her hairline so it frames her face, and then a diffusion moving towards the back. So I'm already doing that just by how I placed my foil. I'm going to continue as we go up to pivot these up. So I'm going to kind of straighten out and then start to over angle. That's going to make it kind of butt up just to the back of our first triangle section, which is another reason I like to do that one first. And it's going to start to cover a lot of space. So this is going to just be a smart way to create some diffusion where you're getting a pop towards the hairline and it's getting softer towards the back. And you can choose how much hair you kind of skip by the size of your triangle, by how much of an angle you're taking. If you're trying to make up time, or if you're in a rush, or you want to see a lot of her natural as you move towards the back of her head, you could really start to flip these angles and you could cover the whole side of the head in just a few foils. If you're trying to get kind of an overall transformation on the hair and you want to see a lot of itty bitty blonde pieces, you can do something more like this, where we're doing a lot of really soft, tiny weave foils. but we're making sure that we're angling up. So even if you look at what we've skipped in between, you can see like what we weaved out, you can see that there is like it's softer, it's closer together in the front, and then it starts to get more dense towards the back because the section was wider. So we left out more just by kind of skimming across the top. Does that make sense? So we are going to kind of keep on moving. I also like kind of pivoting up because where our pivot ends up being is kind of right in the temple area. That is going to give us a nice little pop right where she needs it. I think that, you know, to have a little bit of extra blonde right at the temples is just like a really nice place. It brightens up kind of the recesses of your face, and it will give you, you know, it's a good place for a little pop. So she's going to notice it as the person who's living with this hair. She's going to have to get another set of tickets to Taylor Swift because Taylor didn't get to see her blonde. Diane went last night. So we're going to have to get her back there again so that she can show Blondie. I'm very thankful today because Diane has taught me that I think I am a Swiftie. I know too much. And but so we're just going to kind of keep on moving up. So we've started to straighten out here. And now we're starting to kind of angle up a little bit. So once you get used to the pivot, the angle up happens really naturally. And so just by kind of following the same thing, it's almost like you realize that you're angling up as you're doing it. Hopefully not after the fact, but once you start to think about the placement in this way and how it makes sense, I think that you can get on autopilot very quickly. I feel like once I understood why this made sense to go this way, I didn't spend a ton of time having to figure out, you know, what to paint and where to go and where to angle. I think that there are a lot of questions like that before you get started. But once you kind of get in there and start moving things around, it all just makes so much sense. And so we're just going to kind of keep on rolling up. I will, because Diane told me the dreaded, what if I don't get my roots done? Now I can't trust her. So in my normal salon environment, we would stop to talk about that and say, okay, like, let's figure out exactly how often you're coming, because anytime you're going to do a big blonding project, the maintenance is a big part of it. You know, if you've got someone who you made a beautiful platinum blonde and then they're out in the world for 6 months, it's not good advertising for you anymore. So you have to, it hits a point where maybe don't tell anybody that I did that a while ago. But I think that, you know, talking to your client about what they want to do for maintenance is huge. And so because there's a chance that Diane is not coming in to get her roots done super often, I am going to start to drop them a little bit as we get up towards her part line. I think that right at the hairline makes sense. But as we start to kind of move up the head, I'm not foiling these all the way to her root, because if it's nice and soft and blended when it's done, if she doesn't come in for 6 months, it will be nice and soft and blended then too. It'll just be further away. So once the blend is already done, the pressure's off and she can take her time in terms of when she's going to come back. So that's one of the reasons why I think talking about maintenance is so important, because it will change what I'm doing in the salon. It doesn't mean we can't do what you want, but maybe, you know, we pop a root on something now and then you can let it go for a while. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to give someone the blonde that they want, just maybe in a way that they haven't thought of yet. And that's a big part of what they're coming to us for. So doing something as simple as creating that blonde or that blend before they leave could be, you know, how they ended up with the best blonde they ever had. And they don't know why you're better than everybody else, but they know that you are. And that's all they need to know. Right, Dan, you know.
Maybe.
She knows too many hairdressers. She can't say for sure. But so we're working our way up. As we're kind of starting to angle up, we are starting to get to the back side of that triangle. And our angles are lining up just really nicely. So I'm coming up a little bit further in the front of my foil and a little bit, you know, bringing it down a little bit more towards the back, again, just to create that diffusion. And I think we've got room for one more. Once I start getting to the point where I'm not painted all the way to the root in my foil, I will start to fold my foil in thirds as opposed to like a double up. The reason for that is because if I take this foil and I pop her on here, so I've got a difference in my root from the front to the back. So I'm coming up higher towards the front because I'm there to kind of support this top piece up here. And then I'm just keeping it a little further down, a little softer back here. And then I'm gonna paint it down like normal. But if I were to fold this bottom to top, there's a chance that I get my fully saturated blonde on top of where I've created this blend already. So I will fold it up once. It's just saturated to saturated here, and then fold it up again, because what is laying on my blend is a clean piece of foil. So I will just kind of fold that up. Sometimes if you have a lot of hair on the foil, it makes sense to fold the sides in to give it some stability. I am usually moving pretty quickly through the head, so I'm not against folding the sides in, but a lot of times I will kind of do my whole section and then maybe fold the sides in all together to close it off. But I'm usually kind of double up or doing it in thirds like this. So I know you're all dying to see what this looks like when it's done, and I have great news for you because it's over here. Oh, sorry. So on this side, we went through and did the side of her head before. So we wanted to make sure that everyone who is tuning in today got a chance to see what this looks like all done. And so she uses the center part so it wouldn't be this heavy, but just to see that like she's got all of this soft blonde under here to support this brightness right at the top. And it's just very soft and diffused. We know that this is highlighted, but when you step back, it would take you a minute to figure out where exactly the highlights were placed. And that's kind of the whole point. I love a pattern. I'm really into having a distinct pattern and plan for how I'm doing my placements, but I don't want anyone else to know my pattern. So that's a big part of why I'm doing triangles and diagonals and like creating these shapes, because when she comes in, whenever that is, 3.5 years from now, I can find my pattern because I know what shapes I was using, but you can't tell that there's a pattern in her hair while she's like out kind of living her life. So I really like how this is going to be like soft and supported underneath. And then a lot of times if I do the middle triangle, the two sides, the back really takes care of itself. All I did today, I'm going to spin you all the way around. You ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're really going for a ride.
Oh, you got it.
All I did back here was 3, maybe 4. at a diagonal this way, super soft baby foils, so that I've got a little bit done in this kind of crown section so that it veils over. A lot of times what you've done in the front will veil over enough, but if you want some support, I just do a single digit number of diagonal foils in here just to make sure that we don't have a harsh stop point. So if you were really pivoting this and skipping a lot of hair towards the back of these sections, you probably be able to just leave it because you've already done so much diffusion. But if you're looking to see a lot of blonde, you might want to just pop a couple back here. But how do you feel? You ready? All right. So I'm gonna let Diane go find a place to sit, maybe find a Diet Coke, and just kind of sit and bake for a little bit. And you're all set. And I'll come find you. I'll rinse you. So really, it's a lot about thinking about the head shape, thinking about what you want to focus on, where you want to see your lightness, and where you don't have to focus on as much. We definitely could, based on what she wanted, go through and do tiny foils everywhere and then create kind of a melt afterwards. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's a great way to get a soft finish. But if we're putting the foils in at these angles, our melt is her natural color, and we don't need to go through and do that second step. We can pop these in, take her to the shampoo bowl, give her a rinse, and we can tone her right at the bowl because all of her highlights live together. And so I think that is a huge time saver for me in the salon. And my clients appreciate it because I'm not keeping them for a super long time. And I think that that is something that people are really valuing. You know, everyone's time is money. We're all kind of doing our best. And so if you can get people in and out in an efficient time period, that could be a premium aspect of your service. So based on what you're doing and where you are, it could be something that becomes charged for or known for. And it's just a nice kind of way that you can show your clients that you value their time, which I think then will help them value your time as well. I will say I work super efficiently in the salon, and the amount of times that I have someone late to their appointment or not show up or whatever are few and far between because I feel like they know that I value their time and they value my time in return. So I think that efficiency is kind of a big part of that for us. So that's the placement that I wanted to show you guys today. I do just want to, while I have you, run through one or two of my favorite blonding tricks. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of the Blonde Me Strawberry Toner. I have in my hair right now the Blonde Me Strawberry Toner, and my lighter color is 4 parts of the new Clear Toner and 1 part of the new Peach Sorbet Toner. So the Peach Sorbet is like a really soft, pretty apricot peachy. It is a deep toner, so it's got a ton of pigment to it, but I mixed it with a ton of the clear, and so it just gave me like a really soft, diffused finish. The way that I'm usually using the strawberry toner is like 3 to 5 grams at a time. So one of my favorite tricks is if someone wants to be blonder than their skin tone can support, or if maybe they've been able to be a certain level of blonde and now they've gotten maybe to an age where their skin tone is no longer supporting it, but they don't want to give up that blonde, I'll mix up their regular blonde toner, but I'll put no more than 5 grams of the Blonde Me Strawberry Toner in it. The reason being, it's not enough to make your hair pink. The strawberry toner is really soft on its own, but it is pink. If you put just a few grams into your toner formula, it's not enough to make the hair pink, but it is enough to kind of flush the cheeks and give you a little bit of life. And it's one of those tricks where do not tell your client that you put pink in their hair because they will then see pink where they couldn't see pink. But if you keep it a secret, it just looks like they got a really good night's sleep and they're just like really nice and healthy. And if they were to try to go somewhere else and they didn't get that same result, they can't put their finger on what it is about when you do their hair that makes it better, but they do know that when you do their hair, it's better. And they can't see it maybe, but they can feel it. And those are the things that will kind of set you apart from other stylists. So I love a few grams of pink in a blonde toner. And my other favorite toner is the Biscuit. So Blonde Me has Biscuit in the Lift and Blend series, in the High Lift colors, and in the toner. So I'm not the only one that loves Biscuit. I think it's a very soft, controlled warmth where you're getting a little bit of a beige natural finish, but it has this kick of coolness, which leaves it very champagne-y. It's very soft and iridescent. I would definitely think of it as like a champagne with a little bit more oomph to it kind of toner. So I feel like that's one that if you're not using a lot, go for it, because if you can get that balance of cool and warm and you can get that really soft diffused finish, that's an expensive blonde. So we love an ice, we love a lilac, we love like our traditional toners that you think about. But if you're in a position to try something that is maybe a little bit more grounded in a neutral so that you balance out that warm, it can feel much more expensive and exciting. And then, of course, if you're using more than one toner at a time. So the way that I did my hair is I only have two colors in my hair. I had a bowl of my strawberry and I had a bowl of my clear with my peach sorbet. And I have sections of my hair where they're layered on top of each other. I have sections where they're laying next to each other. But I went through and everything is a triangle and everything is some sort of melt. So I have a ton of dimension, but you can't tell what comes from where. And it's a trick that I do with blonde toners a lot. So if I'm doing like a full global lightening, especially with our new precision lightener, I would go through and do the pre-lightening, get us blonde all over, which is beautiful, but can easily feel flat. So I will go across in horizontal sections and do alternating triangles and maybe lay 2 or 3 toners right next to each other. So they're all going to be close enough to each other that it doesn't feel blocky. And then you end up with all of these different shades of blonde that live within each other. And you can focus on making sure the hairline is one, and then you have alternating behind that. You can do all sorts of things with it, but something as simple as separating out 2 or 3 toner formulas for an all over blonde is just another way where, again, people might not be able to put their finger on what it is, but they know that it's different. They know that it's exciting. So that's a lot of what I'm doing in the salon. I'm also doing a lot of color corrections. So I'm really using kind of the full Blonde Me portfolio to the best of its abilities. One of my favorite things is the Blonde Me lifting creams. So, and there's a new Biscuit one as well. But so I will do, if I have somebody who has an artificial color on their hair and we're trying to go light, I have an unofficial plan formula for how we're going to do this. So the first visit usually is let's put some highlights in, let's see how the hair reacts, right? Second visit is now I know how much muscle I can use. So now I can like punch the gas a little bit and really get some movement through there. When they come in for their third visit though, I've punched the gas. We've gotten a lot of that pigment out. I toned it beautifully while they were here, but now they have a lot of exposed warmth for the first time. So instead of going through with lightener again to tone it, I will go in with a high lift color and kind of put that in because that is going to get into the hair strand. it's going to lighten, but it's really going to drive home those pigments to make sure that we're at a tone that we like. And then it's going to seal everything behind it. So now I might not get a ton of difference in terms of how much lighter they got on visit 3, but I've maintained a lot of control and I've regained their trust, because if you keep on lightening them and toning them, they just think that it's going to be warm every time. And then they might get frustrated and want to give up on the going blonde process. So if you can get some of that control back, really kind of rein it in terms of the tones that you're leaving in the hair that they're seeing 2, 3, 4 weeks after they've come to you, then you can go back in and start lightening again next time. So it really is about a relationship between you and your client. I think communication is huge. And I think making sure that you are thinking outside the box. Sometimes the plan that you have before they get there is not the plan that you should be going with. So listen when they're telling you what they want. And remember that whenever they're out in the world, that's your walking, talking billboard. They're going to tell everyone you did their hair. So you want to make sure however long they're going to be out in the world, it's still going to be a good reflection on you. So that's why you kind of want to really pay attention during that part of the conversation. But there's a million things within the Blonde Me family that you can use to really bring your blondes to the next level. We could do this all day because there's so many options. But I just want to thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, if there are questions that I didn't answer, make sure you type them in because I'll be in the chat box talking too. And thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.